right. Welcome to the / podcast, where we lean into the future of IT by inviting fellow thought leaders, innovators, and problem solvers to slash through its complexity. Today, we're talking to Jude Schramm, Executive Vice President and Chief Information Officer at Fifth Third Bancorp. Jude leads the bank's technology strategy, driving modernization and AI initiatives across the enterprise. Before joining Fifth Third, he spent 17 years at GE, most recently as CIO of GE Aviation, where he led large-scale digital transformation. He's also passionate about community impact, serving on the boards of Found Village and the Cincinnati Hills Christian Academy. Welcome to the podcast, Jude.
Hey, James. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you taking time to get together.
Yeah, glad to have you, Jude. One thing I was thinking about this as I was reading your bio. I've never had an opportunity to ask anyone. I just thought, well, that's just the way banks do things. Is there a legal reason that banks are like they're just obsessed with this vice president moniker for like everybody's a vice president in varying levels? Is it a legal thing for banks? Is there a historical
Yeah,
thing
no,
there? What is that?
that's a good question. I don't believe so. Now, keep in mind, I've been in banking for 7.5 years, and I've never entertained the question myself. But I do think you just see, every bank follows a lot of similar patterns. I think
Mhm.
even in titling, like, assistant vice president, senior vice president, executive vice president. I think it's just the natural hierarchy of how people move up in financial services institutions. And so everybody just adopted it. But there's no, I think, legal or regulatory reason to have those titles that I know of. If there
Okay.
is, I don't know.
Yeah. I just always
But I
kind of
don't think so.
accepted it like that's just what they do, but I never thought I
No,
never
now
thought
there
to
is.
ask.
Maybe for context, though, in certain levels, there are certain regulatory things. Like, for example, I am what's called a Section 16 officer, which means I am bound by certain regulatory requirements for like things that I am or am not allowed to do relative to, like, for example, getting a mortgage with my own
Mm.
bank or a credit card. Like, I can't be treated disparately, nor can I have crazy limits on things. I have actually very restricted, tight limits on like things I can do. So there are some restrictions at certain levels in the bank, but I don't think it's tied to title.
I gotcha. Okay.
Yep.
Well, yeah. One of the reasons we've known each other a long time. We worked together
Mhm.
back in the day, like back in 2001 or something. I think it
That's
was.
right.
It's been a long time. But your journey's been pretty interesting, and you kind of have an interesting perspective coming from one industry for a very long time, and now entering into another one, and your CIO. So I just thought that would be a great way to frame the conversation today. We can kind of talk
Sure.
about that journey and how is banking different for you, and maybe talk through that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. Maybe to give some context, and thanks for the opportunity. So I did. You and I worked together. I started in consulting right out of college, and so spent a couple years. It was what was then a big five firm at Ernst and Young, and then you and I worked together at a smaller middle market, right, consulting firm. Um, and then I moved to GE and spent a large part of my career there in the industrial businesses, and so for me. That is a very long cycle business. You're talking about a business cycle that can run decades, right? So
Mm,
the industry, the aviation industry, from the perspective of like a manufacturing and part of the industry, doesn't change very often. And so, as like a CIO of that industry, you get these long cycle businesses that make it, to be quite frank, much more predictable in my kind of a role. So when you
mm,
think about doing a big IT initiative, something as big as even like an ERP transformation, you can plan 3, 4, 5 years out
mhm,
and be pretty darn accurate in terms of the way the business is going to go and the cycles are going to go. So you can plan these big initiatives
mhm,
and run them fairly forward. Now, whether they're good or bad or not is different, but in terms of just the planning horizon and the predictability of the business cycle, I came to banking in 2018, and it was my first kind of foray into the financial services sector of the economy. And it's just not like that at all. And so, whereas the business, like the company as a whole, has a very similar operational process where we do, mid year, a 3 to 5 year planning horizon that I would tell you is really hard to like do and know that you're going to stick to it,
yeah.
right? And then you try to do 12-month planning horizons for your financial forecasting, for example. But anybody that probably really pays attention to just the news would know that the financial services cycle is very dynamic. It's sometimes month to month, quarter to quarter, what drives the business's priorities. And so as a CIO of this business, like, you can aspirationally plan these long cycles, and you can try to, look into even the next 12 months and say, we're going to go do this. And what I find is, frequently 90 days in, 20% of our plans have shifted enough that you're kind of almost in this cycle of planning differently, which I think, lends itself to the way that, agile has progressed in IT organizations. Like, waterfall was fine in a long cycle, not good in a short cycle. So it's the way IT is adopted as a function into these different short cycle kind of models has really been good, because it aligns better to the way that the financial services industry really kind of functions.
So you'd say maybe those and it's probably a bad way to trivialize it, but I can't think of anything better off the top of my head. But like kind of that set it and forget it mindset, where you had those long running
Yep.
plans, you kind of had to unlearn some of that coming into the banking world, where it's a little more dynamic, and
Yeah.
you gotta be on your toes a little bit more. Okay.
That's right. But it permeates everything. It permeates the way you do financial management, the way you do IT, program management, to your point. Like, everything is just one big shift to like a much smaller compressed cycle. So you live with short-term decisions very intensely.
Hmm.
And the longer term stuff, like, you're pointing the ship this direction, and you may end up having to do this frequently. And it's just a very different dynamic to manage the business. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, so you had to unlearn some things. What are some things like that maybe you brought with yourself from
Mhm.
that manufacturing and that engineering world of GE Aviation?
Yeah.
Was it aviation at the time, or
Yeah. At the
aerospace?
time, it was aviation.
Yeah,
Yep.
they've changed their name again, I guess.
Yeah. I think they have. I think the things that have been really beneficial that I brought with me. One of the other, I guess, things about banks, maybe it's relatable to the short cycle. I don't know if that's more just me supposing, but um, there wasn't a lot of real kind of focus on like processes,
Hmm.
right? And so there's a lot of things that you do as a bank that are, that people see, whether it's, opening and closing accounts, whether it's, people spending their money, whether it's people putting money into their bank or getting loans or whatever. Those are all things that, are activities or interactions that people have. But then backing that is a lot of work inside of a bank. Banks have, a retail network. They have an operations network that does a lot of the back office, and there's a lot of middle and back office to a bank. And so when I got here, one of the things I brought with me that we've now, we're probably 3 or 4 years into it, is a lean mindset from GE,
Hmm.
where, I was a trained black belt, a trained lean, certified lean leader as well, where we started to look at that kind of back office as more of a manufacturing line. So we created, and I brought in the idea of value streams, and
Hmm.
how do we look at a lending process from origination through servicing, and all of the things that have to happen in the frequency that somebody has a loan, for example, as a end-to-end process. And in that, you start to find, that a lot of our activities aren't connected like a process. And so we spent a decent amount of time really building out a framework for like these end-to-end value streams across the different lines of business, across the different types of products. And now we've been operating with those for 3 or 4 years, in terms of looking at efficiency, looking at cycle time, looking at places that we can do automation. And really, so as we've been under a very heavy IT modernization work at the bank, we've been pairing that with process excellence. And that's something that I think I brought, that's been, I think, personally very useful to the bank, because now we can kind of see how our customer experience turns into the way we deliver it, kind of from the inside out, across the big span of an end-to-end cycle that we didn't really have clarity into how that really operated before.
Yeah, it's funny. I've had this conversation with multiple people, but it's like there's like this. I don't know. Let's say like we're swirling the drain, but we're kind of in the tractor beam of, I think, coming upon this like this Uber methodology, because you come from the world where we're learning a lot from the lean manufacturing world, and
Yep.
that sort of systems thinking mindset. forever in IT, we've kind of been optimizing, our own little world, right? Oh, how can we
Yep.
sprint by sprint get better in our velocity? But when you do the lean and the system, you take a more systems or process approach, as you were saying, and you look at it holistically and you optimize the whole thing, not little bitty pieces one at a time. So
That's
that
right.
I love that. And it seems like, with product, lean, systems thinking, all of those things are kind of, they're like forming together to form a big Voltron methodology, if you
That's
will.
right. No,
So
they are. Matter of fact, we've actually done just that. We call it our ways of working. And
hmm
what we've taken is the combination of the kind of more traditional software development lifecycle, right?
hmm
Because from a CTO perspective, from an information security perspective, we got to have the structure of governance for infrastructure for infosec, and we've layered on top of that lean principles, right? And so that way we have a way to make sure we're looking at process and quality from the business lens, and then wrapped around all that agility. So we have, planning increments. We have, four planning increments a year. We have, five sprints per planning increment. And so they deliver software through that kind of, to your point, that stacked layer of following our SDLC, using lean as a standard for how we understand process. And then when we're delivering, it's through agility.
hmm
And so we've created literally to your point, like a multi-layered, what can be a little complex delivery mechanism, but what it ensures is that we now plan across 200 agile teams every 10 weeks, right? And the good news is most of that is all delivery focused because they don't get to that stage till they've gone through all of the lean process design and all of the
hmm
design thinking, and then they don't get to that point till they've cleared some of the governance hurdles. So we know when you go through it, you can get through it fairly effectively. So it's taken us the better part of probably 2 years to get to the point where we feel like we're just now getting good momentum at, like what you said, which is now we can do some incremental improvement and just keep refining it.
hmm
But the heavy lifting is really just getting done kind of now through the end of the year, but then we'll be in a bit of a flywheel, I think, from that point on.
And I know we talked about this a little bit we have a prep call for these, and we talked a little bit about this, but those value stream kind of mapping exercise where you get a bunch of people in a room and you start putting the process up on the wall. And I mean, sometimes it wraps around the whole room.
Yep.
And so how was that experience for the folks there at the bank for you all? Everybody has the same, like, oh my goodness, this is really what we do. All these
Yeah.
steps is that, oh, it's crazy. Like when you
Yeah.
put it up there, it's like this shock factor. You're like, man, what are we doing? Right? Like,
Yep.
why is all this
Yeah. That,
craziness here?
that's exactly a lot of the reaction. Because a lot of times, actually, it starts with skepticism, like, well, this is a waste of time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then you get people to engage, and throughout the course of it, right, they get more and more engaged in like just building this thing out. Then when they're done, they step back and go, oh my goodness. And I'll give you another little funny anecdote. One of the groups that I love working with, they've started making the teams map their processes backwards,
Mm,
right? Start at the end and work backwards because our brains have a linear thinking. And when you do that, you tend to skip steps. If I
mm-hmm.
make you think of it right to left, you're going to then recognize steps that you typically would just gloss over because you don't think of it as a step.
Oh,
And you uncover, and we've seen that increase to your point, the spaghetti charts on the wall by like 20 or 30%.
wow.
And you're right. And then you get done and people are like, wow, I didn't realize. And I think it gets to something else you said, James, which is I didn't realize how many different teams it takes to do this thing. And that my one little piece of the world that I work on can create problems for other people if I do
Mm,
something that I don't take them into account. And those are some of the really fun things, and people really embrace it now. And we're like, so we're a couple years in, and we've automated it. We use some automation process mapping tools that can do it through the IT systems. Even
mm-hmm.
we like to throw those up and ask the people, "How's this look?" And they're like, "Really pretty compared to how it really happens, right?" And then they say, "Let me tell you about all the manual stuff that happens in Excel outside of this. Let's add it into there." And then you're like, "Okay, now we're having fun, right?"
Now we're having a good time.
Yep.
Yeah, I love the conversations in the room when you do those value stream mappings, especially when those aha moments happen where you're like you realize, I've not been a good partner to my colleagues around me. Like I'm in my own little world and I'm trying to make sure my job's easy and I'm making things easy for myself. But man,
Yeah.
it's really making it tough for that person downstream from me or even upstream. Like I'm making it really hard people to deliver, get it to my spot in the value stream,
Yep.
making it really hard. So
Yep.
those, and then people are really cool in those moments. They're like, "Well, I could do that differently. I can make
Yeah.
that easier. We just need to tweak this." And those exercises are really, really kind of eye opening. I love it.
Totally.
Uh, so it's obviously working. You guys are doing some really cool stuff over there at Fifth Third. JD Power recognized you all as the
Yep.
number one mobile banking app. So what do you think? How did you get there? How are you
Mhm.
charting your path? Because I mean, the mobile banking world, it seems like everybody's got a mobile app.
Mhm.
And how do you innovate to the level that you can stand out among your peers and get that kind of that JD Power
Yeah.
recognition?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking. And we are really proud of that, right? The JD Power Awards aren't something you can buy or subscribe to or be a member
Right.
of. And, it's truly customer driven. And it was 5 years in the making to get to the point that we could, I think, consider ourselves lucky that we got recognized. But yeah, you're right. It takes a big commitment by the bank and by the leadership of this bank. I think it does. It starts with, our CEO, Tim Spence, who, uh, himself is very tech forward and is very engaged in what we do. I think giving us the space to do it right. And that's, I think, the first thing I would say. Like when I got here, in 2018, right? In 2021, we really started this mobile journey. We were in more traditional IT architecture. We were able to do, 3 releases a year, which isn't a lot, and they get these big releases. So one of the things, James, that was really important in this journey was, our CEO Tim Spence is very supportive of us. He's very tech forward, spends a lot of time with us, and he gave us the ability to do it right. And what I mean by that is, 5 years ago when we really started this journey, we were on legacy infrastructure, on-prem, a monolithic app that had a lot of white labeling, even with a third party. That we could do maybe 3 releases a year. You're packaging up these big things and deploying it, and it was very driven by either tech or by what I wouldn't say is product. It was driven more by just an understanding of what we're trying to get out to customers for
Hmm.
whatever reason, right? We enabled. Uh, a real effort around a program to do it right, in the sense of, we started with the vision, hey, we need to be on cloud. We've got to modernize the underlying infrastructure, and we've got to be resilient. And so we really spent the first, 18 to 24 months really just tackling the architecture of the mobile app, right? We're going to do it new. We're going to literally not try to iterate from where we are. We're going to basically build clean as much as we can on public cloud. And so we partner with AWS, and we really went down that journey first of like, what is it like to architect this thing right?
Hmm.
And that way we're not fighting generations of technology as bad as we were, and those kind of things. And then we also had formed a product organization,
Hmm.
right? And we
Right.
truly started to treat the mobile app like a product, and incorporated a framework from it's called jobs to be done, which is like a framework thinking about like, how do people interact with, and in the banking case, like, how do I think about things like, I need to pay my bill, I need to deposit my money, I need to get short-term liquidity. It's like, you don't think about it as features, you think about it as capabilities that an end user says, this is the jobs to be done in my life, and
Hmm.
how, from a banking perspective, do we support that? Right. And so we had a chance, while we were doing resiliency and infrastructure, to work with the product teams on like, how do we want the experience to be? And what they were great at is working through to marketing and saying, how do we get customer input into the journeys, into these jobs to be done, so we can really understand what the customers need. And I think the biggest critical thing for me was, and Tim always said this, we got to keep it simple,
Hmm.
and we got to make sure that we're not designing for where we are today, but where we need to be when we go live with it. Right. I can't design for what 2022 features need to be when I'm launching in 2024, like, as an example. Right. So it was the old, Wayne Gretzky skate to where the puck's going to be.
Yep.
And so you put all that together, and then, working with some good partners. Liberty, as you know, has been a fantastic partner for us along this journey. You get some really good talent that can design for modern technology, And then you just put a flywheel behind this thing between product and marketing and customer journeying, and you get to the point where now, we're going to do over 500 releases this year to the mobile app, um, because we can release as often as we need because of all of the work we did to put into the true modernization of it. And now you've got this flywheel that's highly responsive to customers, highly responsive to things that come up in the environment. And then you got to continue to understand, like, where's the customer desires going with the way they want to interact with the bank, and keep iterating through that. So those are, like, the underpinning, I think, methods that we really use to get to where we are and where we want to establish ourselves for where we want to go.
All right. So and I love it because you guys are in the thick of it, and this is your world, and you're operating in that highly optimized way. But you kind of glossed over something I think is a big number, right? Like 500 releases to the mobile app this year. Like,
Yeah.
my math says there's 50 weeks, roughly 52 weeks
Right.
in a year. 500. You're doing 10 releases a week. There's 5 days. You're doing 2 releases a day on that mobile app on average. Like
Yeah, that's
that's
right.
moving.
It is moving.
That's
It is
awesome.
moving. Yeah, I mean, when you build it in modern architecture where it's all decomposed into the domains or the services that you want, you can do that, right?
Right.
And when you have all the test automation set up, when you have all the pipelines set up to develop and to deploy, you can do that. And now it's a matter of, like, making sure you're not just doing it for the sake of doing it, right? Things have to have intentionality behind what you're doing. And that's probably the biggest thing we try to spend a lot of time on, is like being thoughtful about it. Cause you could also then overwhelm your customers with too much change.
Hmm.
Right. So there's that balance of, like how do you balance all that out? And that's what our product teams are really good at.
And you mentioned something about at the beginning, talking about the mobile app, that you're not going to incrementally go from where you started,
Mhm.
and that's great for the mobile app in isolation. But you've got an entire organization. So how do you
Yep.
balance, like, innovating and moving very fast with that mobile application and that mobile experience, and skating to where you need to be,
Mhm.
while I'm sure you can't just go out and rewrite everything around you, because that mobile app
Correct.
interacts with a lot of different stuff. How do you
Yep.
make it such that that mobile app can move fast but not be kind of burdened by
Yeah.
some of those systems around it? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right. So we have, like every other bank and probably most companies, we have a multi-generational architectures running across the bank. We have mainframe, or we still have, and tiered architectures running that are, database, app server, web server. We have all the modern stuff on AWS, and it all has to some extent work together.
Hmm.
Um, and so, we've been on a massive modernization effort for 5 years across all of those other main areas of the bank as well. So, we have, deposit core systems and lending core systems that are migrating from legacy to modern as well. And so, one of the things we had to do was really take time to understand, how do you make this journey, right? And so we spent the better part of probably a year before we even did the mobile journey
Hmm.
thinking through this exact problem. And so, we've really settled on this idea of, there's a lot of core things that happen in the mainframe today that need to happen abstracted away from that, so
Hmm.
that you're not always going back to it.
Hmm.
Right. And so we built these services layers that really allow us to abstract the mobile app, and can hit these servicing layers instead of always having to go back to the legacy. And then we've learned how to take data and move it up to the edge, so that we created a way to kind of a logical separation between some of the legacy and some of the in the new. Right now, I describe it very clean, as if that's the way it all happens, and it isn't. There's still a lot that goes back to the mainframe. There's still a lot that has to hit legacy, WebSphere servers. There's still a lot that has to hit legacy, but we've gotten to the point where, we have really spent intentionality on design so that we can understand where we're prioritizing the things that allow us to go faster.
Hmm.
And then, to be honest, the rest of it is really good planning. It's really good cross-functional coordination. Our agile teams are cross-functional teams. They're not, mobile teams versus mainframe teams. We're building them product wise. So we have a squad can have, cloud engineering, it can have mainframe engineers, it can have data engineers all in it, so they can work together to articulate and coordinate across these different layers of the tech stack. And so it's not easy. It's It's something that is, we're 5 years into probably an 8-year journey to get to where we have everything out of the mainframe that we want out of it. That we're getting these legacy cores into modern
Hmm.
uh, platforms that can allow complete autonomy and agility to happen. I think, um, but it's a hand to hand combat every day with with the tech stack, trying to make sure we're making the right moves and in the right sequence and across the right layer of teams so that we can orchestrate it, kind of front to back across all of our groups. It's hard work.
Hand to hand combat. I love that. It
Yep.
is hard work what you're doing, and one of the hardest parts is, especially you coming in 8 years ago now or 7 years ago now,
Mhm.
and you've got people who've been doing things away for a long time, and you're trying to bring in a new way of working, a new way of thinking.
Mhm.
I think a lot of times organizations need to, the way to do that is to anchor people around, like, you got to really focus on the customer. And I think we
Mhm.
talked a little bit about, you've improved how you're listening to your customers. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, in terms of and then I feel like there's a couple questions there, so let me
Yeah.
try to answer it. Um, there is, there is a really interesting dynamic, I think, across a lot of companies, not just Fifth Third, where you have, you know, 3 to 4 generations of people working inside of your IT organization,
Hmm.
right? And it isn't just about how long they've been in one place. Like, we have people that have been here for 40 years, right? That
Sure.
are amazing people who are the best at what they do. And we have people who've been here for 6 months that are working on some of the newest stuff we have. And believe it or not, their technology somewhere in the mix ends up having to, work together to make something happen for a customer.
Hmm.
And so, a lot of this is, we talked earlier about kind of this whole idea of ways of working where you're stacking up this methodology for how you deliver product. A lot of that is organizational change management. It's getting people to buy in to what you're doing. It's giving them ways to kind of learn in small increments so you can get everybody kind of learning at a pace that everybody can learn together. I mean, our agile journey here, to be transparent, took us the better part of 4 years to get from waterfall to all the way over to agile,
Oh yeah.
right? And that's a long time. I think, it was necessary because I think if you try to do it too fast, you break a lot of stuff and you don't bring people along the journey. And we wanted to get the entire organization there, and we were willing to take the time to do it right. And that's one big piece of it. And then, you really hit on the other one, which is like, how do we get people focused on the outcome, right? And that outcome often is the customer, or it's what we're doing to enable something for the customer, maybe more specifically. And how can we use that type of language and those types of interactions to get people to really continue to invest in what we're trying to do at the mission level.
Hmm.
And one of the things we did in IT the last couple of years is, our guy who leads up our retail branch is like, hey, anytime you want, have your folks come to a branch. We'll let them know you're coming and let them just see how the place runs, right? Let them see how they use your IT applications. And so we do. So we have a schedule with our retail leader and his groups, and people can sign up to go spend a morning at a branch and sit there and see how their IT systems function for our branch employees. And they often come back and go, "Dang, we like really need to do a better job at enabling our employees because we focus on the customer, but we sometimes forget we have a whole front line of employees that deliver to the customer using our tools,
Right.
and we want to get them to feel that. And one of the great things about the leader who runs our line of business teams is he goes out to branch visits with the head of retail like on a quarterly basis. He'll go to Toledo, or he'll go to Atlanta, or he'll go to wherever and spend a couple days in market, right? Really understanding how the stuff that IT does shows up in our retail networks for the customer. And so, that is a rallying cry, because the one thing I will say about banking, as much as we talk about, the short cycle nature of the business, you know, when I was CEO at aviation, I mean, you're the CEO of an engine manufacturer that sells engines to a plane manufacturer that sells planes to an airline that eventually puts a customer in a seat.
Mm.
Like, I couldn't have gotten more far away from the customer experience than that.
That's true.
And today, I mean, if the ATM's down, I own it. The mobile app's down, I own it. People can't get their money. When you talk about the most important things to humans, I think their financial well-being is like one of the top two or three.
Sure.
And when you've been in an environment like this long enough, you get passionate about what you do for the customer because you're maybe the reason they can or can't get gas at the gas station, or they can or can't get their grocery, at at Kroger. And if your stuff doesn't work and they can't get to their money, like you got to take that kind of personally. And I think, it's why we're so involved in the communities that we are as a
Hmm.
bank. It's why our employees are willing to, do releases at nights and weekends if they have to not disrupt the customer in certain cases. It's why they'll deploy themselves in scale to solve a problem. Like when the CrowdStrike issue hit, we had people, that was a manual IT fix for everybody. We had people coming from everywhere. We had people that were in Florida on their vacation, driving up and down I-75, stopping in Fifth Third branches to say, "Can I come in and help you guys get back up?"
Oh, that's awesome.
But that's just the rally of the company and what it means to like care about the customer. And I think it's just a pervasive part of what it means to be in this industry, honestly. At least
Yeah.
I hope it is for everybody. I know it is for Fifth Third. I'll say that.
Yeah, and it's so important. I mean, for a long time, I mean, in our IT business, the IT industry, right? We always focus on the how, or go do this thing, and here's how I want you to do it. Your sprints and all. It was very mechanical. We never really focused a lot on the why, right behind it. Why are we doing? Why?
Yep.
And we always wondered, why do we have motivation problems? Why do people not why are they not doing enough points in their sprints and everything? But when you anchor people on that customer journey and that customer outcome, then you get people driving up 75 and going into branches, right? Like that's the thing you need to anchor people to get them to, they're willing to do that hard work. It is hard what you're doing, like with the transformation. So that's
Yep.
awesome that you guys are doing that.
Thanks. Thanks.
Yeah,
Appreciate
yeah,
that.
that's really cool. And a lot of places don't do it. They still do the just go do what I tell you. And but why is that? Just do what I tell you, right? It's still is.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
Uh, One of the things that I think I read somewhere you said something, and I think it's somewhat of a mission statement for you all that you want to be the bank that people value and trust. And in our
Yep.
business, trust is like that's a capital T trust for us, right?
Right.
How do you balance? As you said, when it comes to banking and money, people's money, they're very particular about that. They want to know. I want to trust that my money's being taken care of. I can rely on it, and it's a reliable service. How do you balance innovation in a world where you're messing with the crown jewels, basically for people,
That's
right?
right.
How do you balance that? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah. No, it's a good question. Yeah, the mission statement is the one bank people most value and trust. And I think it's at the core of what's been a part of this bank's focus for a long time. I think, you know, coming out of the financial crisis, the industry took a big hit of people believing that banks
Mm-hmm.
didn't care about people, they just cared about money, right? And that's
Mm-hmm.
something you have to earn your way back from. If you're part of the industry, you're part of the industry, right? And so one of the things we've tried to do is reinforce in every way we can to our customers, to our shareholders, and to our employees, and to our communities that that's not who we are. We want to be somebody you can trust and rely on, right? And for an IT organization, that often looks like the basics, like resiliency, right? That looks like being there for you in the most basic sense of but when I need my money, I need to get to my money,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that means the mobile app works. That means our branch systems work, our ATMs work, all that stuff. And so for me, and one of the things that we drive internally, I think from a mission is exactly on that. It's on resiliency, right? We put operating mechanisms around our resiliency, and we've even gone beyond the standard IT performance and availability metric into a customer metric. Like I can have an app that's not down but degraded, and we'd call that 100% available, but from a customer perspective it's not.
Right.
And so we've really tried to work like our operations teams and our retail branch teams to incorporate the metrics that reflect the customer experience, not just the pure IT, kind of ITIL measurement system metrics. And that's given us a different lens because it's really tried to reflect itself in our processes around change management, our processes around quality and testing, And a lot of it just starts with the basics of like, you can't be the one bank people value and trust if you're interaction channels are not reliable. So
Hmm.
that's like, I think one. I think from a bigger non-IT perspective, we really do try to be in the community, right? Fifth Third has a tremendous investment in neighborhoods and in communities that we not just want to put money into them for growth and and for the ability to help neighborhoods and communities be well, but we want to be physically present in those,
Hmm.
right? And so we do a ton of community volunteerism work. We do a lot to make sure that we're in places where our customers need us to be when disaster strikes. We have a footprint that sits in parts of the country where hurricanes hit, right? And we have mobile banking buses that basically are ready to sit outside of that and wait and to come in and give banking services to people that have been impacted by something like a natural disaster, right? We try to make sure that we're thinking forward in terms of just the anticipation of what our customers and our communities need and how do we make sure that we're there for them. And we want to make sure they know that. We don't want to just say it. We want to reinforce it in the way we show up. I want to reinforce it in the way we externally communicate, like what we want to be in terms of how we represent ourselves to the communities at large. And for us, that's what it looks like, right? So those are a lot of the things that we do just as part of our core operating practices as a company. We practice these things, we do them, we talk about them, we reinforce them.
I did not know you guys had the mobile like banking,
We do.
disaster. That's fantastic. That's really cool, man. That's
Yeah, they
next
literally
level.
mobilize. We'll have Brinks trucks with cash, and we'll have our mobile banking trucks sitting, 100 miles outside of a designated area where we know a hurricane's coming, so they can come in, they can run on generated power, they can get people access to their money, within hopefully hours after a disaster may strike, and that's something that we've done for years. It's something people probably don't know about, and
Yeah.
if that's good, that means you haven't had to need it, right?
Yeah,
But
we
we
don't
have
get a
done
lot of
it.
hurricanes here in
We
Cincinnati,
don't.
thank goodness,
We
but
don't.
we got a little bit of one time.
It was a big deal during the pandemic, right?
Sure.
How were we going to stay open during the pandemic? I mean, I feel like, a lot of us worked around the clock for months in those early days of the pandemic, leading
Mm.
the couple of weeks we had leading up to it to go, oh shoot, this thing's coming.
Right.
So like once it hit, how do we keep our doors open for our customers? Like it was not there wasn't a really defined playbook that's been well exercised for a global pandemic. That was one where a lot of our stuff worked, but it had to be massively adapted to fit the situation.
And I almost hate to open this can of worms, but I do know
Mhm.
that just from us speaking, AI is a huge part of your day to day work now
Yeah.
at the bank, and especially what you've been charged with at the bank.
Mhm.
Let's speak a little bit about Fifth Third's AI journey. How's it going?
Yeah.
What are you seeing? Where are you all going next? And what are those sort of things? Tell me about that.
Yeah, that's a great question. We've been investing in generative AI for over 2 years as a company,
Hmm.
right? We almost 3 years now, through almost 3 years ago now, we really created a small team that's all they were going to start thinking about.
Hmm.
Is This is right as really Chat GPT was coming out. What is this going to mean? What do we think we're going to have to be keeping pace with? And so, for us, it's been a journey that's been it feels longer than the way the hype's even been in the market
Hmm.
because of where we started. But what we did is we built a really core group of people that have really tried to stay abreast of the way that this next wave of tech and generative AI is coming is bringing itself really into just the normal ecosystem of the world, and then trying to obviously redirect our attention into like what does that mean for us as a company and as a bank. And so, for the last couple years, we've started with like probably a lot of other people experimentation with Gen AI in very safe ways, not banking related. Just how do we learn the tech? How do we get our hands on it? How do we experiment with it?
Hmm.
Um, how do we think about its potential, and how do we make sure we don't overemphasize the hype
Hmm.
and then get ourselves into 1,000 directions that are all going to lead to nowhere. Um, and so we really did a couple things, and kind of back to your our previous discussion about being the one bank people most value and trust, the very first year, I'd say, so call it 20, 2023 to 2024, somewhere in there, like that period. The first thing we really stood up was our kind of governance program,
Mm,
right?
nice.
Understanding, like, how do we think about generative AI and what parts of our company are we going to allow Gen AI to interact with customers directly? No, right? Are we going to allow Gen AI to, do X, Y, and Z? Yes or no? And what then you get into the nuance of not no, but not now, or yes, but not yet. And we spent a lot of time in that and really building a formal program around how do we think about our buy partner build strategy? How do we think about experimentation? How do we think about vendors and partners and managing that ecosystem?
Hmm.
And we built an entire structure around that over the course of about 12 months while we continued to learn about the tech and feed those learnings back into that governance process. And so we created a nice little flywheel that was really, really effective. And then in 2024, or then, now in like late 2024, it's like, okay, let's go really experiment with it in the real world that we're in. And then you start to realize, hey, we knew some stuff. And then we started to actually do stuff. And what we knew was probably 50% of what we thought could be. And oh my goodness, this is evolving so fast. Some of the things that we thought were true were completely not true already, and man, we got to really adapt ourselves to this cycle. Um, and so we've been for the last year. We've got about 12 actual programs that we're running
Hmm.
around different aspects of where we think Gen AI can make an immediate impact into the bank. Um, and then we've got a couple that are a little longer term, like we're doing them, but we aren't sure exactly when we'll take them all the way through to say a production mode. But we're kind of learning and iterating on those. And what we're also thinking about is how do you frame this up to talk about it at scale with an entire workforce that isn't thinking about it to the level that we are.
Hmm.
Like, so we can go into a bunch of questions now if you want, but that's a good maybe way to frame it. Um, I can go into how we're framing it and how we're thinking about it too, if you want. Like, I could talk for well over an hour, so I don't want to.
That's
I don't want to take the whole time, but
yeah. That's why
we're
I
we're
said I
really
heard.
putting framework on this about how we logically move into it.
Yeah, so I said I didn't know about opening up this can of worms because I know you and I can sit here and talk for hours about this stuff for sure.
Yeah.
One of the things I did want to mention that really resonated with me, and this is something that's in the industry, and I struggle to advise our clients about, like, we've got to lead through this with empathy and with pragmatism, because there's this tendency to see, oh my goodness, all these the efficiency gains and whatnot. I can fire a bunch of people now. We were at a conference, I think
Mhm.
it was down in Nashville, and you were on
It
a
was.
panel.
Yep.
Yeah, and you
Yep.
said something. You said, we're trying to make our people, like our humans,
Humans
superhuman. And
superhuman.
I
Yep.
love that. And I was like, that's the key. That's what people need to think about, is like, how can
Yep.
we make what we do? It's not all about how can I make them be able to work faster so that I can fire five more people. It's really, how can I
Correct.
make them more efficient
That's
and
right.
better at what they do, so it's a better outcome
That's
for our
right.
customers, right?
That's
They're
right.
they're better at their job. So
Yep.
speak a little bit about that. I just love that when I heard that.
Yeah. So the way we've really approached Gen AI up to this point, in a lot of our dozen or so projects that we're running, are geared towards exactly that, James. It's geared towards, like, how do I take the people that are interacting with customers today and enable them to do their job better? And better can be defined a couple different ways. Could be giving more effective, faster answers to customers to questions or problems that they have, because I'm enabling them to have access to a generative AI system that's delivering information to them about regulatory information, or the how to help a customer with something, because they can interact with an agent as opposed to trying to scroll through pages and pages of a knowledge bank,
Hmm.
right? Is a good example. We call that agent assist,
Right.
right? And to me, I'm now making that human superhuman because they're able to do their job way more effectively. They actually have a better experience because they're helping customers, they're doing less, I'll call it administrative flywheel work, and truly able to have conversations and get access to information very quickly.
Hmm.
And so now what I just created was scale. Like, I don't need to eliminate that agent and make that a digital agent. That agent can probably now service a bigger customer base,
Mhm.
right? And so, one of the things we talked about is like, how do you scale fifth third so it's twice the size, but you can do it with the same number of employees, as an example, right? And you
Absolutely.
do it by enabling them to have more capacity. And capacity can look like a generative AI product that they're interacting with while they're interacting with a customer, right? And so that's one of the ways that we've talked about, making humans superhuman. The other one is just honestly, if you take our 20,000 employees and, a big swath of them being knowledge workers, through our partnership with Microsoft, we've given them all access to Copilot.
Mhm.
And it's like, self productivity. How can you improve on the time you spend doing email, the time you spend sitting in meetings, because you don't have to do all those things as much as you used to,
Right.
right? We've
Absolutely.
enabled you to have a much more effective way to do that part of your job, to where instead of sitting and listening in a meeting, you just don't. And somebody that's running the meeting becomes a decision between two people. They use Teams to transcribe it, then they send that out to the people that otherwise would have been sitting there just listening, right?
Yeah.
And so, you do those kind of things that are important for enabling the workforce to just be able to do what they do at a different level of scale, and think of it that way first. And we're not the only ones. I'm in a lot of, discussions with peer banks and with the trillionaire banks that we talk about AI and how it's working. Because I think as an industry, we need to kind of move a little bit together through this, because
Mhm.
you know the industry is kind of regarded as a whole from a regulatory perspective as you all can do these certain things or you can't. So you don't want one of them to kind of ruin it for everybody to some extent, right? So I think it's a pretty common thing that we're thinking through today, not just at Fifth Third, but really as an industry, is like we have to invest in reskilling our workforce to utilize this technology. We have to get it in their hands and get them to understand like it isn't as scary as it may sound, and it may be actually a big lift for you in your day-to-day job.
Mhm.
And then we've got to find the right ways to enable it, um, into the business. And so we're really trying to integrate it into our lean programs, right? When you're trying to lean out a process, traditionally you take the manual waste out, then you'd try to move work into a more IT system for more automation. But then
Sure.
there's still always this work that could be done on top of that. And that's where I think you're going to find the most applicable uses of Gen AI over the next couple of years, as it continues to evolve. As well as I do, it's still in the hype cycle. Thousands of companies are now all of a sudden Gen AI companies.
Mhm.
They're all going to solve your problems for you, but it's just not how it works, right? Many of us have lived through 3 or 4 technology cycles where, whether it's PC or it's internet or it's mobile, it always
Cloud.
takes longer than we thought it would to be adopted. The outcomes are seen much later than we thought. And typically, it's not because the technology isn't capable, it's because humans can't adapt that fast anymore. And the technology is changing faster than we can humanly adapt. And we're going to be the break. And so let's get our humans interacting and comfortable and knowledgeable, and let's not force this upon them and say like, we're trying to automate you, or we're
Right.
trying to, because I think some of the previous cycles did that. They made really bad mistakes. Like it was, everything's on the internet, we're not going to need people anymore. Well, that
Right.
didn't work, right? Of course.
Well, and then the problem is that you have to correct back. That pendulum has to swing back, and then sometimes there aren't. When I think about like software developers, some of this stuff. That's what I'm really worried about right now. Is this everybody? The hype is all about. Well, we're not going to need junior engineers. We're not going to need all this. Well, the kids are going to hear that, and they're like, I'm not going to study computer science. I'm not going to study that stuff. And then we're not going to have
Right.
any talent when that pendulum comes back, and we have to correct.
Yep.
There ain't going to be nobody there.
That's right.
That's the
Well, and,
scary
and
thing.
you and I've talked about this too. Like if you take that thought process, great, it's you and 5 senior architects that are driving an IT organization. What happens when you all retire?
Hmm.
Who's going to have the experience to take your job? The answer is nobody,
Right.
and that ain't going to work. So you got to have real intentionality around the workforce that's going to allow for sustainability and growth and career pathing. And look, there's going to be new jobs that get created. There's going to be jobs that maybe transition or maybe you don't need, but it's not like we're all going to be working 3 hours a week and then sitting at the beach while agents are running the world anytime soon. Like, this is not going to happen. And
No.
so, let's be pragmatic about it and think about the reality of like, how do we bring a workforce along with this thing? Because that's going to be important. Like, there's going to be a need for us to really understand. And yeah, the future role of engineers and the future role of IT may look different, but you know what? We have a chance to help influence that and drive it in the right direction,
Absolutely.
not to hold it back, not to rail against it, but let's really think through this and let's do it right so that the next generation of people that are sitting here doing this podcast can look back and feel like, hey, these people gave us a good start at it.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I agree. All right, so we need to. It'd be great to have you on again. We can talk all about AI. I'm sure in 3 months everything will be different, and we can talk about different things.
You
But
got
we
it.
have to. So we're going to move on to our next segment of the show. This is the segment that we call "Ship It or Skip It."
Okay.
Ship or skip, ship or skip. Everybody, we gotta tell us if you ship or skip.
So the idea here is, we come up with a topic, and we kind of say, "Ship it, yeah, I like that," or "Skip it, nah." Most people kind of, especially when I talk with software developers and architects, of course the answer is, "Well, it depends," right? That's what architects do. We always say it depends.
Yep.
So that's okay. I always have to ask everybody about this whole the vibe coding thing. This has
Yep.
been a hot topic. Everybody has a take on that. So what's
Yep.
your take? How are you feeling about this whole vibe coding trend?
I gotta go ship it.
Yeah.
I think it's great. We're using vibe coding here already. And I tell you the thing that's most interesting to me is I now have my COO, CEO, and CFO vibe coding with us. Right? We're giving them interaction with these things so they can see it and they love it. I know our engineering teams are obviously, utilizing it to some extent and messing around with it in good ways. And I think it's gonna really enable a different level of kind of engineering in the near future. And I think it's going to be a credible part of the ecosystem going forward.
Yeah, and my take on this has been, and it sways here and there, but like the if you take like vibe coding, it depends. I guess it depends on what you're doing, right? If I'm gonna be vibe coding production code for one of my clients for Fifth Third, if I'm developing code for Fifth Third, and I'm if you stick to the, like, I don't know what the definition of vibe coding, I can think that varies as well too, but like
Yeah.
just like not caring about code quality or designs or anything like that, just letting the computer write the code and don't worry about any of that stuff. I'm probably not going to do that for my client.
Right.
However, as a creative experience, I think it's kind
Mhm.
of it's an interesting flowy thing for creative work that, oh,
Yep.
let's tinker with this game or something. So
Yeah.
I mean, it depends. That's because I'm an architect.
I know that makes sense. But I think you said something really important, right? I don't believe it's going to have an immediate deep benefit in things like enterprise IT,
Right.
right? That's just not where architecturally it can be in the current world we live in.
Hmm.
Right? It's going to have some purpose somewhere. That's not going to be where it is right away. Whether it gets there or not, I don't know. To your point, that's an it depends.
Hmm.
But it's a great way to get non-techies interacting with tech. I think it'd be great. It's a great concept for like enterprise data analytics,
Hmm.
right?
Oh
Being
yeah.
able to use kind of you go one step beyond things like low code no code into something like this where now a practical business analyst might be able to use this as a way to give them a way to interact with data differently than today having like an IT department build something for them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You can do very much self-service, right?
Yeah.
Get the graph you want, the visualization just like you want it. I do love the kind of the democratization aspect of this nature of
Mhm.
vibe coding. You're exposing this world of creating software to people that never had access to it before. So these
Right.
creative brains that have been out there that have ideas and cool things to share with the world, they have a way to do that now through software. So I do
That's
think
right.
that's cool. But all right, what about you hear a lot of people talking about it. There's a lot of hype around this as well. It's a little muted right now because all the air is being taken out of the room by AI. But quantum computing, it's still out
Mhm.
there. It's still a lot of research. Where's your head on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna skip it right now.
Hmm.
Um, Not because I don't believe it's gonna get to a point that it's gonna be critical to the industry. It just still feels far enough away for me that I just, to your point, like the air out of the room is gone for it for now.
Hmm.
I know it's coming, right? But for me today, it's not something we're spending a lot of time on.
Hmm.
Um, Not be again, I don't even know how to describe the way I'm trying to say it, but like we're like I think there's a cost curve to stuff and it's still so expensive. Like I
Right.
don't know how it gets industrialized yet. Maybe is the best way to say it. I'm trying to wait to see how it gets industrialized over the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, I think we're having a hard enough time paying for our all the, and creating all the energy for the Gen AI stuff we're doing right now, and you want to add
Yeah,
quantum into it?
right.
Yeah, that would be a little crazy. I think quantum. The only thing that I would say is, it's. I think there are applications for it, but it's not everything, right? It's not quantum computing doesn't just mean much faster computers. That's not even necessarily true
Correct.
for certain things. Certain algorithms, certain problems are better suited for traditional computing, right? It's not they're not just
For sure.
yeah,
Just like everything's not Gen AI, machine learning is still going to be traditional AI is going to be around for a long time.
absolutely. It's going to be a huge part of what we do. So yeah, I'm a skip it for now. The only thing I maybe would say is, I think I shared a white paper with you about this. We talked
Mhm.
about like the cryptography stuff with like
Great. Yeah.
some of that we got to
Agree
maybe
there.
shore up ahead of time so people are we got to be ready
Totally
for
agree with
that
that.
stuff. But
Yep.
yeah, I don't think it's like you're not going to have a quantum powered banking mobile app. I don't see that.
Correct.
Yeah. All right. What about and I think I guess I know what Fifth Third's position on this. I know you guys have gone all in, with the was it the Genius Act recently? Stablecoin has been something
Yep.
interesting. You all even have publicly said you're interested in. I'm
Mhm.
just curious, you personally, are you a big like you're a Bitcoin guy? Are you into cryptocurrency? Are you an investor in that area? Is that a thing for you?
Yeah. Yep. For sure. I own some Bitcoin. Yep. I am, and I think I'm in it as much for learning as I am for anything. Like I don't think my retirement's going to be built on it
Hmm.
personally. Um, but I am a big believer in it. I think uh, the idea of stablecoin is really interesting in terms of I think there's a major disruption opportunity when you think about like one of the biggest costs to people or banks or whatever can be things like international wire movement because of the
Hmm.
cost you pay all the way to move these things, and you can just maybe level that and wipe it out with a stable coin, right?
Hmm.
And so I think there's a real practical application for stablecoin now that's going to be real and going to be something that's going to be globally impactful very quickly in a positive way. So, I think all the cryptocurrencies are going to be worth everything people chase. No. But I think the practical use of stablecoin and some of these digital currencies are going to be very important. And you're right, as a bank, we are fully understanding and operationalizing how we're going to be prepared to grow with the industry as it continues to grow.
Yeah, I think one of the genius things about that Genius Act was that they were very smart, I think, to stick with just kind of stable coins as payment, right? So they're just to
Yep.
be used for they're not securities yet.
Yep.
That's the thing that's kind of like that. That's where things
Securities is the
start to
place
get
where I get a
crazy.
little wonky. Yep, I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah, that'll get a little weird. But yeah, I personally am not a big cryptocurrency guy. I don't have any. I don't know why that is. But I've tinkered around with that sort of stuff, blockchain and those sort of things from a technical perspective. But I don't own
Mhm.
any. I don't know. Maybe I'm a luddite. I don't know. I guess I feel like well, everybody always talks about, oh, I bought Bitcoin when it was like this much, and it's like 1,000 times more. I'm like, well, I'm just in it too late now, so it's no sense in throwing money at it because
You
I won't
missed
make
it.
any money.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's
I don't
right.
know. Yeah. Always late to the party, I guess. What about something I was thinking of today to talk to you about, and I think I know your answer on this. I think you've already kind of hinted at what you've done here, but like people talk about the Conway's law, right? The notion, the gist of it is like the structure of your organization is going to kind of dictate the architecture that your software evolves to. Like the
Yep.
communication paths or all that are going to basically
Yep.
mimic your organizational structure. And so this
Yep.
notion of a kind of flipping the script a little bit, doing that reverse Conway maneuver where you rearrange your organization so that the architecture of the software that you want. So you reorganize the people so they build software the way you want them to build it.
Mhm.
Where's your head on that one? How do you think is that hype? Is it crazy? Does it work? What is it?
Well, I think it's real in terms of organizational structure.
Hmm.
Like people do that. If you look at a lot of companies and you study them, you look at their org design from an IT perspective, it is a real thing. And I think it's a real thing that I personally fight against because I don't like it. I think being a guy who's a process guy, being a guy who's a product guy, in terms of my belief of where you want to organize your people around outcomes and around this idea of products or jobs to be done,
Hmm.
has to fly in the face of IT architecture. Because
Okay.
if it doesn't, then you quickly devolve yourself into the silos of the IT stack and you make it really hard to work across that. It makes it really hard to get product out the door.
Right.
And I think that, I think traditional IT shops found themselves in that position of organizing around the architecture because that's the way things got done. If you look at a lot of your um, Silicon Valley companies and that are working in these startups, they organize around the product that they're taking to market, and they're faster and they're leaner. They're not dealing with legacy tech, I get, but I think that the more that we can be product or outcome oriented in everything we do, including our organizational constructs, the more effective we can be, and it keeps us closer to the customer, and that's where we ultimately want to be.
Yeah, I've found the reverse Conway thing, and I kind of go back and forth with this, right? I find it to be somewhat dubious in that like organizational change is hard, number one, and
Yep.
we as architects, like we've even pushed against like, okay, if you spend all that time like writing down your architecture, remember the old UML diagrams, right? If you spend all
Yeah.
this time and effort into these diagrams, you're like, oh, it's beautiful, it's up on the wall, and I got this big plotter and I'm able to print these things out. Look how gorgeous this is. And you're like, but our customer needs are different now. Well, hold on. I just spent 3 weeks on this big diagram. I can't change that. Look how beautiful this thing is. So you get like, it's too rigid, right, for the customer. And then it becomes kind of that boat anchor. Then just the artifacts become your boat anchor. It's not even the software,
It
it's a
does.
diagram.
Well, and to be, if you think about where you're like I'm from too, like when I got here, I think that was the way that things happen. Like you had business teams that called themselves by their IT system name that they worked in,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I'm like, what is going on? Like, why are we doing this? And then we actually had this exact conversation with one of my guys who was a massive proponent of doing it through Connery's Law, right? And I'm like, the IT team calls themselves the Workday team. Like they're not calling themselves human capital,
Right.
or the human capital team's calling themselves the Workday team. It's like they're not the Workday team. Like they're the human capital team. Is that like does anybody else see like that's probably sub-optimizing like the expectation of like what the experience should be? And to me, it's like it kind of devolves so far. It's like when it permeates the culture that much, that I think that's a concern. Should be.
Yeah. I mean, I like the idea of like the domain driven design where you have people focused
Mhm.
around a problem domain or how are we impacting the customer's lives, like a domain within your business. But yeah, down to like,
Yep.
well, we're the Workday team. What? But
Right.
why do we use Workday?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And what happens when you change? Now what are you?
Yeah. What if I need a different product? Not that you would. Workday's fine, but
Right.
yeah. What if I go to Bamboo or whatever? Fantastic. All right. Those were great. What about we have to transition now to our this is the real meat of the show. And I don't know if
Okay.
you've listened. I know I sent you some links
Yep.
to listen. This is the meat of the show. Like we're just all of what we've done so far has been the warm up. We're just going through the motions to we got to
Yep.
please
That was a
some people.
charcuterie. Now we're heading down to our
Exactly.
steak.
Yeah, right. We can really now sink our teeth into the real things that people tune in to the /. These are the things that people want to know. So there are correct answers. We'll warn you.
Okay.
The bar has been set high. We've had some folks score really high. I know
Okay.
you're an overachiever. You're a type A personality. So but I do want to warn you. Just
Okay.
be ready.
It's time for the lightning round. Rapid fire, don't slow down. Answer quick and make it count. In this game, there's no way out. It's time for the lightning round.
Okay.
I'm ready.
Really, again, this is it. So what is your favorite ice cream flavor?
Banana chocolate chip from Graders.
That is fan. I had that literally just the other day. I like that as well. Are reindeers or reindeer real creatures?
They are.
Yeah, they are. Okay.
Yes. I've seen them in Alaska.
Fantastic. Okay. So we have proof. All right. So we can probably just mark that off. This one has stumped some people, but I feel like you're going to get this one. What does the acronym SCUBA stand for? And no Googling. ChatGPT.
I forget it's something underwater breathing apparatus.
Self-contained.
Self-contained underwater breathing
All right.
apparatus.
Yep. All right. How many cups of coffee do you drink per day?
Wow. How do you define a cup?
Oh, whenever you fill up a receptacle that holds coffee for yourself. Let's just do that. How many trips to the coffee filler machine?
Yeah, two.
Two. Yeah, that's where I'm
Two.
at.
So probably 24 ounces.
Yeah, feels right. Okay. Did you go to sleepaway summer camp as a kid?
I did not.
I didn't either. My parents couldn't afford that.
Not a fan.
We met with a client the other day, and he was talking about his daughter went on this. She would go to one of those when she was younger, and now she just went on like a 2-week backpacking trip by
Wow.
herself. And this is like a freshman in high school.
That's
And I'm
insane.
just blown away. And he was explaining like the first night these young ladies were there, wolves stole their backpacks because somebody left some food in one of their backpacks and took it out in the woods, and they had to go out find all their stuff. I'm like, man, my kid would. I don't know.
Nuts.
I'm not doing a good job raising my children because they would not be able to handle that at all. I don't know. Maybe I'm
No.
not doing it right.
Or maybe you are because you're not letting them be in that situation. Who knows?
I don't know.
One or the other.
Yeah. That blows me away. I don't know what I would do if a wolf took all my stuff. Like, I guess it's his now, right? I don't know.
That's right. Yeah, you ain't going after it.
Yeah, exactly. You're my generation. Super Mario Brothers or Zelda?
Super Mario Brothers.
Yeah. What's your feeling about cranberries?
Yeah, they're fine.
Yeah.
They just are.
Yeah. I don't have a huge, big opinion about them one way or the other.
No.
What about your favorite, your go-to junk food? If you're gonna eat junk food, you're kind of a healthy guy. But if you do eat junk food, what are you reaching for?
Yeah, I'm reaching for probably a Grater's chip wheelie.
Is that like the cookie thing?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I had that once and it was fantastic.
I will eat 2 at one time if I am not careful.
Okay. All right. At Graders, they pack on some calories in their stuff too.
You got to
it's
be,
rich
yeah. That's
and-
why I try to avoid it. You said favorite, not what I go to the most.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys, and don't you guys have a Graders like right down at the bottom
We
of your
do.
building?
That's a
Yeah.
problem.
Oh,
I've been known to go down there and buy a bag of them and stick them up here in the freezer or hand them out along the way back up here to justify why I did it.
yeah. Like, I was buying this for you all, and then go in your office. Yeah.
Exactly.
I understand. I could see myself doing that as well. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Heather Locklear.
Heather Locklear. Okay.
Yep.
I like that one. Yeah. I think that's right
That
in the
probably
same
dates
era.
me, but yeah.
I think mine was, it was from the Fall Guy, the TV show. Lee Majors, what was it? her name?
Yeah, I remember.
Heather Thomas.
Heather Thomas. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was my first celebrity crush. Just because I thought like,
Same era.
Yeah, if I could just get a jetpack, you know what I mean? That's all I need. And I can.
I don't know how jetpack translates to celebrity crush, but sure. Yeah.
Well, if I
got you
had
there.
that, I would have Heather Thomas.
Oh, that's
That
right,
was,
that's
I was thinking like if I
got it.
was
I got
just
it.
like Lee
Okay.
Majors, I can then, I think that was my calculus at that time when I was, 7.
I like it.
Yeah. All right. This is I do believe you made it onto the leaderboard. We'll have to
Good.
run through all of the calculations, but preliminary results do show you did quite well.
Good.
The scuba thing might
Appreciate
hurt you.
that.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I'm actually scuba certified, so you think I would know that one.
But I mean, hey, the important
Self-contained.
stuff. How to like sweep your arm and get your regulator back in your face. And
You got it.
You don't care about the
Yeah.
acronym at that
Not
point.
kill yourself by lying about your weight and sinking with a heavy weight belt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the
Yep.
important things. You don't need to know the S and the C. All right. Any takeaways? What any closing kind of comments or thoughts or things you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, no, I think first of all, thanks for having me on,
Mm,
James. I really do appreciate the chance to come and talk to you and to get to talk about some of these, ways we think about technology. I guess the way I would maybe kind of frame it up is like, we are in a pretty big transitionary state, but like I kind of articulated in my board, like I think of modernization now as an infinite game. Like it's the state of normal.
mhm.
And so, companies, their IT leaders, their employees, we just got to accept and get really used to the fact that the pace of this capability that is coming into the world is going to continue to change faster and faster and faster. And we just got to learn how to either, adapt faster with it, but also be mindful of the fact that we want to not lose the sight of the human nature of everything that we have to do. And when you're running a a business, the customers matter, and let's always not forget about all of this impact on them when we're thinking about what we're trying to do as an industry. So maybe that'd be it.
That's great. That's fantastic. Yeah. And again, I want to thank you for coming on. I know I always enjoy, we get together for coffee every now and then, and our conversations are
Yeah.
fantastic. I always enjoy that. So it was kind of like we had one of our little coffee talks
Yep.
with other people who can listen. So hopefully they're
Yeah.
going to enjoy it just as much as I always do. But yeah, again, thank you for coming. Really, really enjoyed the conversation. Definitely.
Yeah, me too. Thanks, James.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode. If you'd like to get in touch with us here at the /, drop us a line at the /@calibrity.com. See you next time. The / podcast is created by Calibrity. Our director is Dylan Courts, producer Ryan Wilson, with editing by Steve Baradelli. Marketing support comes from Taylor Blessing. I'm your host, James Carman. Thanks for listening.